Statistically, women who kill are quite rare. But this means that when women do kill, it's almost more intriguing to find out why they decided to commit the ultimate sin and take someone else's life. In 2024, there were approximately 583 murders across the UK, and in this video, I've gone through and chosen 12 of the most horrific, sadistic, and terrifying of those murders committed by women to highlight their cases. Hello and welcome to the Diary of Madmen and Monsters, where we talk about the madmen, women and monsters that inhabit our society, covering well-known and not so well-known cases across the UK and beyond. And if you run off true crime, caffeine and swear words, you're in the right place and you're gonna fit in well. Now, let's get ready because it's time for more true crime. Just before I crack on with the first case, due to the fact that I can only briefly touch on each case in this video, please rest assured that I will be covering some of these cases in full detail in future on the channel. So if there are any details that you would like me to follow up on in the future, please do let me know in the comments. And one final point, all of these murders were either charged or sentenced for their crime of murder in 2024. The first of our killer women is Maria Gardner. In January, Maria was charged alongside Michael Anderson and James Houston with the murder of grandfather Brian Maylie, aged 52, at his flat in Glasgow in 2022. The court heard that the body of Brian Maylie was discovered inside his home on Tuesday, February the 8th, 2022. It was found that the trio had killed Mr. Maylie after walking several miles from Glasgow's Govan into the town centre, where they then took a taxi to the victim's home in Springburn to collect something owed to Anderson, all whilst carrying a toolbox containing items that were to be used in his murder. On their arrival, they subjected Brian to a horrific ordeal, beating and bludgeoning him in a sustained attack that included stabbing him with a knife and a chisel multiple times, one of which severed a major blood vessel in Mr. Maylie's arm, causing huge amounts of blood loss and his eventual demise. They also attacked and assaulted Brian's partner, striking her on the head with a bottle and inflicting cuts to her face. After the heinous crime, the three went on to get a taxi back to Govan, with Gardner and Houston later being arrested at a Premier Inn, where they were celebrating Valentine's Day together. During the trial, it was accepted that all three of the trio were party to and participated in the plan to assault Mr. Maylie in such a way that his death was a foreseeable outcome. Gardner was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 18 years in March 2024. Our next murderess is Scarlet Blake, a trans woman who is a calculated killer whose extreme interest in death led to her plan to lure Jorge Martin Carino into following her, leading him to his untimely death at her hands. It was found that Scarlet had an unusual interest in death and harm that went beyond mere fantasy, having previously been charged with the mutilation and death of a cat after she live-streamed herself mutilating the animal and then placing it in a blender on TikTok for the apparent gratification of herself and her long-distance partner, Ashlyn Bell, in America. It was said that Blake found sexual gratification from the thought of violence and death. On the night of the 25th of July 2021, the first night after lockdown restrictions had been relaxed, Scarlet was out looking for victims around Oxford town centre as her thirst for violence and destruction had reached new heights. Mr. Carino, Blake's victim on that fateful day, was a Spanish national who had been out with friends and become separated from them, choosing to sit alone on a seat in the city centre. Unfortunately, the choice to sit on the bench he sat upon would put him in direct contact with Blake, whose premeditated plan was then put into full effect. At 4 AM, Blake approached Jorge as he sat on the bench and took advantage of his vulnerable position. She led him to a secluded spot by the river and, upon arrival, put her dastardly plan into place. First, she hit him with a vodka bottle. Then she strangled him and then pushed him into the river, where he sadly drowned. The police would find Jorge's body the next day and an investigation would be launched. However, the police at first struggled to conclude whether Mr. Carino had been murdered or not. But 2 years later, their investigation concluded that Jorge had been murdered and that Scarlet Blake was in fact the killer. Throughout the trial, it was noted that Scarlet showed no remorse for the murder of Jorge Carino and had said that the reason for the murder was due to the fact that her long-distance partner had said it would be hot if she killed someone. Blake was arrested and subsequently sentenced to life with a minimum of 24 years at Oxford Crown Court on the 23rd of February 2024. Christine Rawle, 70, the third of today's murderous mares, was an equestrian-loving hypnotherapist from Devon, dubbed the Horse Whisperer, who stabbed her husband Ian Rawle to death in a murderous rage after a row between the pair over money. It was claimed that the attack on the 20-acre farm the pair shared came just hours after Christine had told her daughter, "I hope the CUNT dies." During the trial, it was noted by the prosecution that Christine and Ian had somewhat of a turbulent relationship, which was even compared to the Roald Dahl children's book The Twits, with a pattern of dastardly tricks being played by Christine towards Ian in order to get one over on him. Some of the tricks included putting chili powder down his underpants, adding Viagra to his tea, and wiping her bottom with his ties. Christine's defense of this bad behaviour was resistance to Ian's controlling behaviour, and that her final lashing out was a loss of control due to 40 years of bullying, intimidation, coercion and physical SAs. It even emerged that Christine had stabbed Ian in the arm and chest once before, after Ian had thrown an ashtray at Christine's son Thomas, who was in primary school at the time. Christine was arrested and charged with grievous bodily harm, appearing before magistrates in 1996, but she was acquitted after her husband refused to support the prosecution. Thomas Rawle, Ian's stepson, commented that his stepfather would try and control his wife by hiding her keys, bank cards and phones, or blocking her vehicle in so she couldn't get out. He also said that Ian would kick Christine, who was registered as disabled in her bad leg, with his steel toe-cap boots on, and that he had also witnessed Ian throw Christine through a window. At the time of Ian's death, there was a large amount of arguments over money between the pair, with Christine wanting to sell off land to pay for a private eye operation. The arguments had led to Christine moving from the main house into the barn. On the morning of the 21st of August 2022, things came to a head when Ian had come to help his wife muck out her horses as she was suffering from a bad shoulder. It was alleged that Rawle moved up behind Ian and stabbed him in the back as he pushed a wheelbarrow of manure towards the muck heap, thrusting the blade into him up to the hilt, before walking off and ignoring Ian's pleas for her to remove the knife from his back, even as he staggered after her for 100 yards. It was reported that Christine was on the phone to her daughter at the time of the murder and exclaimed, "I've stabbed him! I've stabbed him!" prompting her daughter to ring the police. A call operator for the ambulance service then rang Rawle to help her administer first aid to the dying man, but instead of helping him, she said to the operator, "He was on and on at me. I'm watching him die in front of me." In her defense, Christine portrayed Ian as a controlling, violent SA and said that she simply snapped after 40 years of abuse, but the jury did not believe her account. Commenting on his closing speech, the lead prosecutor, Mr. Sean Brunton KC, said, "The killing was as clear a case of murder as you are likely to find, with Rawle attacking her husband in a fit of temper during the argument." He described Rawle as almost compulsively manipulative. He said that the issue of self-defense doesn't arrive, it's a non-issue. He is walking away from her, pushing the wheelbarrow. What was she threatened by? By nothing. The prosecution had also warned the jury that it had not heard from Ian, and claimed some witnesses had tried to pour poison into their ears about him, making him out to be a monster, and said Christine had only ever described the alleged sexual abuse after he had died. After the trial, Christine was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years. Now, just before I move on to our fourth lady on the list, if you are enjoying this video and want to see more videos like this, please press the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel to help us jump on the algorithm and grow the channel. Thank you, and on we go with the video. After a birthday night out celebrating her 40th birthday, the fourth killer on our list, Lisa Elwood, fueled with alcohol and rage, would kill her husband, Ryan Elwood, after an argument escalated into murder. Lisa Elwood, originally from Dublin, moved over to be with Ryan in Wakefield in 2019, and they married a short time later. The court heard the relationship was marred by conflict, with Elwood claiming she was beaten frequently by Ryan when he was drunk, and claiming that he would cheat on her, driving her to become a functioning alcoholic, even drinking on her way to work. Ryan's family said that they had feared the relationship wouldn't end well, but that they had no idea it would end in Ryan's murder. On the evening of August 29th, 2023, the couple had made the decision to celebrate Lisa's birthday with a night out on the town, first attending the Lupset Hotel before then moving on to Wakefield City Centre, where Lisa began drinking high percentage alcohol cocktails in the Blind Pig pub. By all accounts, the night started out with the pair in high spirits, but at some point in the evening they had a falling out and they then left the pub separately. Upon leaving, Ryan made his way home, quickly followed by Lisa, with Ryan arriving home first and Lisa arriving around 10 minutes later. It was noted that Lisa was so drunk she was seen falling over just yards from the front door of her home. Once in the house, in a rage, Lisa then confronted Ryan in the kitchen, starting the argument that would result in dire consequences. As the argument escalated, Lisa grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and then pinned Ryan up against a kitchen unit. She then plunged the knife into his chest, piercing his rib, lungs and aorta. Ryan then fell to the floor and lay there motionless as his blood spewed out of his body. Recorder Curl said that there was simply no recovery possible from the wound. Upon calling 999, Lisa had claimed she had simply found Ryan dying upon returning home and became angry with the operator who was trying to help her carry out CPR on Ryan, whilst Lisa swore profusely down the phone. Ryan was pronounced dead at 11:45 p.m. and Lisa was arrested by police shortly after, with her comments as she was arrested being, "Is this a joke?" Throughout the investigation, Lisa denied having any involvement, however, maintained that she had no memory of the period due to her drunken state. During the trial, Lisa tried to portray Ryan as an abusive and controlling husband who would beat and abuse her frequently. But, Recorder Curl said, Ryan Elwood may have been no angel himself. There's compelling evidence he was violent towards you on occasion. However, I'm satisfied that it was usually you who escalated matters and resorted to physical violence. With a statement taken from a friend of Ryan's that was read to the court, describing Ryan as becoming a shell of a man, and that they had witnessed him being attacked by Lisa in public, and with friends and family of Ryan saying that they had seen a decline in Ryan the last couple of years. Ryan's former wife and mum to his 2 children described him as a caring man who loved his children and who had been cruelly taken. After the trial, the jury found Lisa Elwood guilty of murder, and on the 13th of March 2024, she was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 16 years. Our fifth murderess is one of the more cruel and callous of the 12. Fiona Billingham, a primary school teacher in Northampton, would go on to commit a murder that was described as a carefully planned domestic execution, killing her long-term partner of 17 years, Nicola Billingham, In a murder, she had masqueraded as a sex game between the pair, after Nicholas had been found to have had multiple affairs, with one of said affairs resulting in the birth of a child with the affair partner. Fiona then went on to conceal the murder for months by burying his body in a makeshift grave in their back garden. On the night of November the 1st, 2021, Nick returned home from his work as a builder to be surprised that his partner Fiona had run him a bath. Fiona, it was found, had convinced Nick to get into the bath with the promise that the pair could then partake in sex after he had cleaned himself up. Unbeknown to Nick, just a couple of days previous, Fiona had purchased a knife which she was planning to use to take his life, and which she had made ready to be used in her bedside drawer, alongside a black bin bag, a chisel, and some cable ties. As Nicholas was cleaning himself up, Fiona positioned herself on the bed, ready to seduce him, and upon getting out of the bath and entering the room, Fiona convinced him to slip on an eye mask, assuring him that she was feeling unusually kinky tonight. In the excitement of the experience, Fiona mentioned that she wanted to tie Nick up, and thinking that he was in for the time of his life, Nick happily agreed. And this is when the proceedings changed. Upon securing his wrists to the bed via cable ties and making sure his eye mask was positioned carefully over his eyes, Fiona reached into her bedside drawer, pulled out the knife, and without a word of warning, plunged the knife into his neck, severing his jugular vein in a single precise blow. Through the pain and shock, Nick could only mutter one word: "Why?" To which Fiona replied callously that she would never let him hurt another woman again. The blood from Nick's body immediately began to flow out onto the mattress in vast amounts, and Fiona simply loomed over him, watching his life force ebb away second by second, until quickly Nick had perished. Upon seeing that he was dead, Fiona got to work quickly. She wrapped Nick in plastic sheets, dragged his body downstairs, and placed him into a makeshift grave she had dug down the side of their house, using plastic sheeting, breeze blocks, cement, stones, and compost to construct and conceal the burial site. After Nick's murder, Fiona then went on to cover her tracks by proceeding to construct a web of lies, from pretending Nick and herself had COVID and had to isolate, to telling friends and family that Nick had run off with another woman, even going as far as to send text messages to family and friends from Nick's mobile, pretending that he was still alive and well. She even invited Nick's mother around for a drink, and as she sat in the kitchen, spinning her web of lies, little did Nick's mum know that her son was in fact lying dead just meters away from her. As the weeks turned into months, Nick's disappearance and murder stayed uncovered. And although at first being described as upbeat and chipper, eventually Fiona's mental health began to deteriorate, sending family and friends conflicting messages regarding her whereabouts and confusing them to the point that they confronted her about her story, and eventually asked police to conduct a welfare check on her. On March 15th, police found Fiona at a holiday home in Cumbria and found that she had tried to take her own life. Once police found Fiona, they took her to hospital and she was given immediate medical treatment. But upon a search of the holiday home, police found a diary in which Fiona had documented the murder and concealment of her partner Nick in full detail, even down to revealing that she felt she had a dark alter ego called Tulip 22, who was ruthless, reckless, fearless and efficient. With this find, police then launched an investigation into the whereabouts of Nick and subsequently found Nick's body in the grave at the side of the house. And of course, Fiona was then charged with murder. Her trial began on March 13th, 2023 at Northampton Crown Court, where she pled guilty to manslaughter by reason of a loss of control. However, her trial was abandoned after 64 days when it was found that her key defence witness was a court custody officer who had conducted welfare checks on her whilst she was in her cell. As a result, a new trial date of March 25th, 2024 at the Old Bailey in London was set, and once again Fiona pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter. However, on April the 26th, 2024, with growing concerns over the sheer amount of evidence mounting up against her, Fiona changed her plea and decided to plead guilty to the charge of murder. On the 30th of May 2024, Fiona was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Nicola Billingham. She was given a minimum term that she must serve of 20 years. Our sixth and seventh killer women are the sadistic duo Zoe Ryder and Nicola Lethbridge, who robbed and murdered a vulnerable neighbour they had dubbed a and filmed the sickening scenes as they did so. Stephen Kosacharski, who lived alone, had mild learning difficulties as well as a number of medical issues and was subject to victimization from the pair in the weeks leading up to his death after it was suggested that they had identified him as an easy target. Friends of Stephen, speaking during the trial, had said that he had changed in the weeks leading up to his murder, becoming uncharacteristically short of money, as well as unkept and wary. On August the 9th, 2023, Lethbridge, 45, and Ryder, 36, stormed into their neighbour Stephen Kosacharski's home on Fraser Drive in Woodseats with the intention of robbing and harming him in the process, after convincing themselves that he was a paedophile, despite absolutely no evidence whatsoever to back up their warped claims. The duo delivered a flurry of blows to Stephen, punching and kicking and bludgeoning him to his face, head, neck and chest as he begged them to stop. The bruising to his chest was described as most certainly being from stamps and kicks to the area of the injury. During the ordeal, the pair filmed the evil murder as they accused the 60-year-old of being a dirty effing wrong'un. The pair could be heard in footage played to the court telling Stephen to wipe your effing face, to which Stephen replied, "I can't stop bleeding," causing one of the pair to reply, "Do you think I give an F?" It was reported that they humiliated Stephen completely during their horrendous attack, and they were also heard threatening to castrate Stephen using a pair of scissors after his trousers fell down, as well as making false claims that he was a pedophile. The torturous attack only came to an end when Stephen managed to use an in-home emergency alarm, allowing him to speak to a call handler, reporting that he was being attacked and asking them to call the emergency services. Stephen was rushed to hospital, but sadly, due to the severity of the beating, could not be saved and succumbed to his injuries 2 days after the ordeal. Ryder and Lethbridge were arrested shortly after the event, after police found them in another neighbour's residence, and following their arrest, significant findings were discovered, including videos of their attack on Stephen on their mobiles, as well as DNA evidence on their clothing, as well as on Stephen's clothing too. Mr. O'Brien said a pathologist who carried out a post-mortem examination on Mr. Kosacharski's body said he died as a consequence of what he described as a sustained and blunt force physical assault and hemorrhage of the skull. He described the assault as sadistic. Following a full investigation, the allegations the pair made about Stephen were found to be completely false, and Judge Sarah Wright commented that Stephen had changed in the weeks before his death. He was visibly troubled and scared. Having heard the evidence of his rapid decline, I have no doubt that you, Zoe Ryder, had targeted him as someone you could exploit and had gone on to do so, and that you, Nicola Lethbridge, had indulged in loud and intimidating behaviour towards Stephen, keeping Stephen awake and frightening him. For whatever reason, during the course of the robbery, you set about him in the most brutal, heartless and despicable manner. The pair were found guilty of murder by a jury of their peers, and on June the 5th, 2024, were both sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 26 years each. Our 8th murderous madam is a woman who callously took advantage of one of the most vulnerable members of our society, a 90-year-old lady who was 5'3" and weighed less than 7 stone, who she was supposed to be caring for, going on to rob and eventually murder her to try and cover up her crime. Jane Hill, a 52-year-old grandmother and carer, had been caring for Myra Thompson for approximately 4 months before the murder and had visited her around 30 occasions to care for her. However, things began to go awry when Mrs. Thompson started to notice money was going missing from her home. Mrs. Thompson had then had a neighbour set up a covert camera in her home, and it was that camera that had caught Hill stealing £40 from Miss Thompson's handbag. Hill was then suspended by her employer whilst under investigation after she outright denied the offence. Whilst off work on suspension, Hill devised a cruel and callous plan to remove Mrs. Thompson as a witness from the case altogether. And on the night of Monday the 22nd of April, Hill waited outside of the home of Myra Thompson until the bedroom lights were turned off, then entered Myra's home with the intention of removing her as a witness to the thefts. Hill let herself into Myra Thompson's home with a spare key kept in a key box near the front door after she was sure that Mrs. Thompson had gone to bed. Upon doing so, Hill made her way to Myra's room and upon entering, hit her over the head with a metal flask, then smothered her to death with a pillow. The next morning, on Tuesday the 23rd of April, another carer from the same company found Mrs. Thompson's body and alerted the police. Upon her arrest, Hill initially claimed that she had no involvement in the murder and that she had been asleep at home on the sofa on the night in question. When confronted with the location data from her phone, she initially made out she was baffled as to how her phone could have been located at the scene of the crime at the time of Myra's death. But upon a third round of questioning, she confessed to killing Mrs. Thompson. She said during this interview that she had previously visited the address on April 18th with the intention of returning the money, but had bottled it. She alleged that she had then returned 4 days later with the intention of persuading Mrs. Thompson to accept the return of the money so that she would not lose her job, and had gone in the evening so that the neighbours would not see her. Mr. Johnson told the court Hill said she let herself into the house. She went upstairs and Mrs. Thompson started shouting, so she picked up a flask and hit Mrs. Thompson. But that did not stop the shouting, so she used a pillow and put that over Miss Thompson's face until she stopped struggling. She said she then returned to her car not knowing what to do and returned home as if she had been doing an overnight job. Her undoing was that in her claim that she had sat and waited for Mrs. Thompson to turn the light off before she entered the property, she did not realise that such actions were entirely at odds with the motive of wanting to convince Myra to accept the return of the money and take matters no further. In her defence of the stealing, Hill claimed that financial struggles brought on by her partner, who had to stop working 12 months prior and was now on benefits that had been sanctioned, were putting extra stress and strain on her. And as a result, she fell into the temptation due to her finances being stretched. She could not, however, offer any real explanation for her reaction to being caught out stealing by Myra Thompson, resulting in the outcome that it did. Jane Hill pleaded guilty to the murder of Myra Thompson and 4 counts of theft, and on Friday, the 11th of October, was handed a life sentence with a minimum of 22.5 years. She sat with her head down and showed no reaction as the sentence was declared. The 9th murderer on our list of killer ladies is slightly different in the fact that the outcome of the case against her has an alternative outcome from the rest. In this case, Veronica John has been verified as the murderer of her 2 young children in a frenzied attack in an attempt by John to hurt her husband because of fears he may take their children away. However, in the months leading up to the trial, it was found she was unfit to plead, and so she was instead given an indefinite stay at the maximum security hospital, Rampton, with the outcome being that in the future, should she become fit to plea, a full trial will then take place. However, a trial of facts wherein the facts of the case were presented to a jury whose sole decision to make was to decide whether or not she had in fact been responsible for the deaths of her children, came back naming her as the responsible party. And so, in light of this, I have included her in today's list. On June the 11th, police received 2 calls. The first was from a man at a car wash in the Stoke area at 2:30 in the afternoon, alleging that his wife had visited his work, stabbed him in the stomach, and then confessed to him that she had already killed their 2 children back at home that morning.
Statistically, police emergency.
Yeah, I'm Nathan John from 33 Flag Street. My wife just came to my car wash and stabbed me, and she said she just killed the kids.
What she stabbed you with?
Her hands are all bloody.
What she
a knife. I have the knife.
And she says she's killed the kids.
Yes, her hands are full of blood.
So where would the children be? Flag Street?
At 33 Flag Street, yeah.
Just stay on the line for me.
At a similar time, a woman also called 999 and confessed to killing her 2 children. As she was making said call, the police arrived, and in the background of the call, you can hear the police arresting Veronique on suspicion of attempted murder, pinning her to the floor and demanding she puts her hands behind her back. During the melee, you can hear the police officer shouting into his radio that he needs an ambulance immediately, and telling one of the other police that were there to get on the kids and have a look at them.
Staff to police emergency.
On number 33 Flag Street, I'm calling to report I just killed my 2 kids.
You're number 33 Slack Street.
Number 33 Flag Street. I'm here. I'm on the phone at the police. Yeah, I'm here, yes.
Who else is here? Just you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you sit down for me.
Yeah.
Where are your children? Right, push your hand. Get on the floor, on the floor. Behind your back now! 4-3, I need an ambulance immediately. Get on the kid, have a look at them, get your drugs on. Get me multiple ambulance, this is after going to child stab. You're under arrest for attempted murder, you don't have to say anything, but it may harm your defence. But I've mentioned something which you later rely on in court, anything you do say may be given in evidence.
Despite the efforts of paramedics at the scene, the 2 children were pronounced dead, and Veronique was then arrested for their murders. It was found during the trial that the suspected motive behind Veronique's murder of her children and attempted murder of her husband was all down to the fact that she wanted to hurt her husband, and that she simply did not want him to take their kids away from her. During the frenzied murders of her children, it was identified that she had bladed her 11-year-old son Ethan more than 20 times and caused fatal brain damage to her 7-year-old daughter, her multiple times in the head and torso. She then, dressed in a dressing gown, travelled to her husband's place of work and stabbed him in the stomach with the same knife she had killed her children with. When the police arrived at her home and arrested her, she told the police, "If you have a gun, shoot me. I am not a monster. He was going to take them from me." As it turns out, Veronique had been arrested the previous day for assaulting her husband, who she believed was having an affair. She told the officers, "I didn't want my husband to get them. It's something I was thinking about for a long time. Just kill myself and the kids. Unless you guys are offering me the death penalty, I have nothing more to say." She added, "I did it because I love my children, to protect the children. If there's any possible way I could be put to death, I would like that. I mean it 100%. It was found that John, a charity shop worker who was born on the Caribbean island of St. Vincent, killed her children hours after searching online, "Can a foreigner be charged with murder in the UK?" The judge, Mr. Justice Chowdhury, told jurors, "This trial is slightly unusual. The defendant has been found to be under a disability. She is unable to participate in the trial in any meaningful sense. Your task is to decide whether the defendant did the acts of unlawfully inflicting injuries on and killing Ethan and Elizabeth, which led to their deaths, and unlawfully inflicting injuries to Mr. John." Jurors deliberated for approximately 30 minutes before unanimously ruling that John unlawfully stabbed her children in the neck and head before stabbing her husband, Nathan John, at a local car wash. Mr. Justice Chowdhury said that the reason for the savagery shown in killing the children appeared to be an attempt by John to hurt her husband. "The facts of this case are almost too horrific to comprehend," he said. "You claim that you are not a monster, but your acts were either those of a monster or someone who has lost all capacity to reason." Veronique was then detained indefinitely at a secure hospital, with Mr. Justice Chowdhury expressing that her detainment would not be time limited and could be for the rest of her life. Number 10 on our list of wicked women who killed in 2024 is a lady who murdered an army veteran she was living with in cold blood, after he had left the door open and her dog had escaped. She then went on to boast about the fact that she had been a bad girl on TikTok and said that people could write to her in prison when she was eventually arrested, encouraging people to Google her name to find out where she was going to be held. Winter Swan Miller, 37, ferociously attacked Stuart Croker, 62, in his flat in the Signals in the early hours of Sunday the 23rd of June 2023, stabbing him a total of 27 times before strangling him with the strap of her handbag, with his body lying undiscovered for 5 days after his murder, until his neighbour reported smelling a foul smell coming from next door. When police entered Stuart's flat to conduct a welfare check on the 28th of June, they found his body covered with a blanket and sheet, with a fan placed behind him to keep the body cool. They also found a number of notes left by the killer that was described as a trail for the pigs to follow. One note read, "Take my effing dog, you WHORE. This is why I've done this, haha." With another reading, "How does his death feel? Haha. You thought I would let you get away with taking me for a effing mug. Taking my dog. Are you real?" A post-mortem of Stuart's body found that he had sustained 27 stab wounds to multiple areas of his body, including his abdomen, chest and neck. Immediately, an investigation was launched into the murder, and upon realising that Stuart's bank cards were still being used by someone to withdraw cash in the West Midlands, police apprehended and arrested Winter Swan Miller. After the murder, Miller had travelled to a McDonald's in Andover town centre and ordered a sausage and egg McMuffin. She then fled to Birmingham and was arrested on the 30th of June. Upon apprehending Miller, it was found that she had uploaded a video to TikTok on the morning of the 23rd of June, claiming she was taking a break from the platform as she had been a bad girl just hours after the murder of Stuart.
I'm going to be taking a break from TikTok for a bit, I think, because I've been a bad girl. So I've gave you my name, I've gave you my location. If anyone wants to get in touch with me, just give me a Google search, and I'm sure you'll be able to find out where I am. And if you want to write to me, I'll happily write back. You probably won't want to speak to me when you find out anyway, but there's more to the story than just one side. I just hope that it all goes well, really. I can only explain when the time comes, but I had to do what I did because of my situation. At the moment, I feel sick, but I don't feel that I've done a bad thing at all. So look, there's Oblivion. I got him back. He got stolen by some drug addicts, my therapy dog, so I got him back.
Officers also discovered further unpublished videos intended for the platform, which were made on the same morning. In them, Swan Miller, who at the time of the offence lived with Stuart in his flat, went into reasons why she had killed him, including claiming that Croker had been complicit in her dog being stolen, when he had left the door open and the dog had gotten out, leading to someone stealing the dog. It was found, however, that approximately 2 days before Stuart's murder, her dog was returned to Miss Miller. During the 3-month-long trial, it was discovered that Winter had problems in her formative years and had an issue with drugs that played a large part in the murder taking place. place. Whilst sentencing Miller, Judge Morris said, "Having heard the evidence in this case, I am satisfied that your relationship with Stuart Croker was anything but exclusive and that you came and went from his presence as you pleased." The judge then said the relationship was more of a convenience to you than anything born out of coercion from him. If there was any level of control and coercion, that came much more from you to him than the other way around, she added. On the Pomeranian, the judge said you had a fixation on Stuart Croker being responsible for allowing your dog to escape his flat. Your attack on him had an element of revenge in it. On the attack, she said it was orchestrated in a forceful and aggressive way against a defenceless man. She then went on to say Swan Miller was a highly manipulative person and her actions were merciless and remorseless. She added, "If fame and notoriety was your goal, then by killing Stuart Croker in the appalling manner you did, you succeeded in achieving it for all of the wrong reasons." The judge sentenced Swan Miller to life with a minimum of 23 years in prison. To this day, she has expressed no remorse for the murder of Stuart Croker. On the morning of Monday, the 4th of March 2024, in a student bathroom at Coventry University, a baby that no one apart from her mother knew about was born. However, after only a couple of hours of life, the baby was dead. Murdered in a heinous way, with her tiny body then cruelly hidden from the world in a shocking manner. Chia Chai Sin, our 11th killer on the list, was born and raised in Malaysia and had been studying marketing at the Malaysian University of Technology. With this course came an opportunity for Chow to travel to the UK on an exchange programme and continue to study at Coventry University. Around June 2023, just 6 months or so before her trip to the UK, Chow became pregnant and, despite knowing, told no one of her pregnancy, deciding instead to keep it a secret from everyone in her life. In January, the time for Chow to travel to the UK arrived, and she did so knowing she was pregnant and giving no consideration to terminating the pregnancy or giving the child up for adoption. It was said that she did the best she could to simply convince herself that she was not pregnant, as she simply could not face the reality of the situation. Chow arrived in the UK on the 9th of January 2024, with a return flight to Malaysia booked for the 17th of May 2024. By this point, she was 7 months pregnant, but again decided not to inform anyone of the fact that she was carrying a child. On Sunday the 3rd of March 2024, Chow began to feel contractions and realised that she had gone into labour. It was found that she had not made any preparations for the arrival of the child or looked for support from anyone in her life regarding the birth of the baby, even though she knew that at some point soon she would have been ready to give birth. On Monday the 4th of March, Chow gave birth to her child unaided and alone on the bathroom floor of her accommodation, and instead of informing those around her, decided again to lie and tell her friends that she was unwell due to experiencing a heavy period. The birth itself became complicated due to a large amount of blood loss. Chow was in a significant amount of pain and had become weak and exhausted from the ordeal. Despite this fact, the baby was born with no issues and for a short period of time was alive and well. But unfortunately, Chow did not want her. Soon after her birth, Chow messaged a friend asking for medication to replenish blood, with an accompanying selfie showing her friend Eve how unwell she seemed to be. Again, Chow blamed her ill health on a heavy period, and of course her friend Eve had no reason to disbelieve her. At approximately 2 p.m, Chow's friend took red bean soup to her room and handed it to her through the door. It was found that she would not allow her friends to enter, but that they could see that she was crouched on the floor and in significant pain, and so they became increasingly worried. Upon insistence that Chow opened the door, her friend was able to see inside and witnessed the sheer amount of blood that had been lost. At this point, she had locked herself in the bathroom with her child still at that point alive, with the taps running on full to hide the sounds of its cries. Even during her most distressing moments, it was found that Chow was going to all lengths to hide the presence of her child. and upon another chastising of her friend Eve, asking why she was in her room and demanding that she leave, Eve did so. But by then was so worried she decided to inform Pamela Bennett, the receptionist at the halls of residence, who immediately went to Chow's room and could see blood everywhere. Chow, however, still maintained that it was simply due to a heavy period and expressed that she did not want to go to hospital, despite the fact that an ambulance was called and arrived on scene at approximately 3:45 p.m. Still, she refused to leave the bathroom, and so, at approximately 4 p.m, they left. And following their departure, Chow demanded that everyone in her room that had came to help leave, so that she could be alone. Once everyone had left, Chow sprang into action, putting her evil plan to get rid of her child in place. First, she placed the child into a cereal box and then into a plastic bag that she zipped up, sealing it completely. On doing so, knowing that the baby would eventually suffocate and pass, she then placed it in her luggage case, believing that no one would ever find the body. Later in the evening, when her friend Eve came back and the baby was nowhere to be seen, a sense of normality was resumed. Upon moving to a new room, Chow realised that she was unwell and would need to visit the hospital. At the hospital, she was given a blood transfusion, and doctors were unable to make sense of the story they had been given, after Chow consistently denied having given birth, despite all of the signs pointing to this being the case. However, after an intimate examination 2 days later, on the 6th of March, it was obvious that this is what had happened. And it was only when the police were called to the hospital that Chow admitted to having given birth and what she had done with the baby. Immediately upon finding the baby in the location that Chow had told them it would be, she was arrested for murder and charged with the killing of her newborn daughter in such a despicable manner. Preceding her trial, Chow was found guilty of murder and on the 25th of October 2024 at Warwick Crown Court was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 17 years. And last, but of course not least, the 12th woman who killed in 2024 is Gemma Watts, who, with her already convicted murderer boyfriend, teamed up to take the life of an innocent woman, who they then went on to butcher and scatter across London in order to try and conceal their crime. On April 2nd, 2024, in Rowden's Fields, Croydon, police were alerted to the presence of human remains found by a dog walker. Upon investigation, the police identified that the remains were that of Sarah Mayhew, a woman who had last been seen alive in Sutton, southwest London, on the evening of March the 8th. In May, more of Sarah's body parts were found in the River Wandle in Mitcham by contractors carrying out cleaning work. Quite quickly after the initial body parts were found on April the 2nd, the police identified Gemma Watts, 49, and Stephen Sampson, 45, as the last known people to have had contact with her. And upon questioning them on April the 6th, they were both subsequently arrested for the murder of Sarah Mayhew, both admitting to murdering and dismembering Sarah Mayhew after she had attended their home. At 8:30 on March the 8th, Sarah was seen on CCTV at a cash point with her coat and bag. She then made her way to meet Stephen Sampson and Gemma Watts, and it is believed that the pair had then murdered Sarah in their home on the night in question. The following morning, Miss Watts was seen leaving the address and walked to the back garden gate and left. Miss Watts then purchased bleach and clothes before returning to the property. It is then when the pair concocted a brutal and devious plan to conceal the murder of Sarah by dismembering her body with power tools and a hacksaw, and then scattering them across London in an attempt to conceal the heinous act. Although the exact cause of death is unknown, forensic examination found that there was bruising to Sarah Mayhew's skull and 2 small vertebrae in her voice box were broken. Her head had also been shaved. On September 26th, Sampson of Burnell Road, Sutton, southwest London, pleaded guilty to Sarah's murder, with Gemma Watts pleading guilty to murder on the 21st of November. Judge Mark Luckraft, KC, said the only sentence that could be passed for each defendant was a life sentence. The couple will be sentenced in January 2025. Now, if listicle style videos such as this is your thing, then watch out for the next video coming soon, where I showcase 12 more murderous women who were sentenced to life in prison for murder in 2024. And you might also enjoy this next video on screen now, that showcases 5 of the deadliest UK prisoners and why they were sentenced to life in prison. And if you are enjoying our content but haven't yet done so, please give us a follow and help us hopefully be able to do this for a living sooner rather than later. And as always, I'll see you in the next one when it's time for more true crime.